The bot space is really interesting. Voice interfaces, we think, are just at the beginning of becoming really useful and helpful. We all sort of trip over and complain about when they don't work. But increasingly, in small, minor ways, they're working way into things that people do every day. And if you look at share of awake minutes that people talk the voice interface, a few years ago it was 0. And now we're at maybe on average sub a minute. But it may well grow to multiple minutes a day. Just as screen time on smartphones, I looked at mine a little earlier today, my average over the last 7 days was over 5 hours, which is just insane. But it's at the early stages. There's some unique things about bot interfaces and voice interface, text and non-text, that make them intriguing. They create challenges, but I think with the developments we've seen in AI, those challenges are being addressed. Well, I'm sure you're aware that back in 2016, the bot space was very hot. There's a lot of capital coming in. There were a dozen companies doing what Dashbot does today, and we've gone through a sort of the valley of disillusionment. We've gone through a period where scarcity of capital. Dashbot is now the dominant analytics platform out there for good reason. It's a hell of a product. Can I say that word, product? Okay. And it's as I talk to people at this conference, it's clear to me that we're starting to see the Fortune 500 wake up, that this is moving out of experimental budgets, and people are starting to learn the language and understand about deployment and seeing where the ROI is, and really need to measure what's going on. It's really interesting. Siri, part of the Apple ecosystem, is really subpar. I don't know anyone who would rate it an 8 or 9 or 10 out of 10. But on the new AirPods 2, Siri is actually really useful. You don't have to do that incredibly annoying act of taking your phone out of your pocket, holding it up, and pressing a button. You just, as you're walking, listening to your music, go, hey Siri, what's the weather today? And it answers. And it seems to answer faster than on the phone, which is actually an impossibility. But it's a better experience. In the same way you see 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds just naturally talk to Google or Alexa as if they're a friend. And so I think that adoption, that behavioral change is being worked out. And a lot of it is around context. Voice is a peculiar interface. It's not surveillable and it's linear. You have to consume it from beginning to end to understand it. I don't remember those calculators used to have a tape roll on them, and you do your calculations, what's 5 times 7, etc. Then you go back and check something that was from 3 minutes or 5 minutes ago. That tape that existed doesn't exist in voice. And so it has to be within the confines of your short-term memory, within the context. And this is where advancing AI and making it really helpful to understand the context of a simple sentence like, what's the weather today? What's today? Where am I? What am I referring to? And coming back and giving you an answer that's highly targeted. It's interesting you call it a space. I'm not sure it's a space. It's a tool set. And what's fortunate today versus 3 or 4 years ago is there are elements, parts of the pieces that have been built. So if you want to code a chatbot, there are systems out there where you can do coding without actually writing lines of code. Now, that may or may not be an advantage to you, but for some people it's a strong advantage because they can't write lines of code. If you want to run analytics, you don't have to build your own. You can just drop in Dashbot and it's there and available. So these tool sets have been built as they've been built in many other areas before. And so I think you're in a better position today than you were a few years ago. I think there'll be more pieces built in that you can just plug and play with over the next few years. But ultimately, you're not doing it because you want a chatbot. You're doing it because you want a solution that is better. That's either delivering something far cheaper or much more accessible than it would be elsewise. And I think that you're going to see a lot of people look at chatbots as cost saving. I think it's really utilization increasing. I was thinking about this example earlier today. A user manual is an awful experience, right? And it's kind of interesting. Apple doesn't really ship user manuals, but the user, which tells you that they get that it's an awful experience. But really, if you've got a problem with your fridge and you don't know how to control the buttons, wouldn't the chatbot interface be so much superior than opening up a 60-page manual in 4 different languages to try and work out where you are, where the index is then key to get it? So I think you're going to find solutions like that that'll come along where it becomes a pleasure to reach out to utility to find out what's going on, to deal with your bill, etc., as opposed to the pain it is today.